Hi, I'm Zoe, and thank you for watching Paranormal Extraction. Today, I have on Philip Kinsella again, who has a book out called You, the Public Deceived. It's an incredible book, and you can watch it on my YouTube channel. But now, he has written about this is absolutely amazing, Sky Crash, with co-author Brenda Butler. Now, you're going to really want to watch this one because they have had interactions with a reptilian, okay? And it is absolutely incredible. Philip is absolutely amazing man and full of information. I know you're going to love this. You're going to love Philip. And this is absolutely amazing. So you're going to watch it. Here we go. Hey, Philip. I am so glad to have you on today with your new book, Sky Crash. And that is co-authored with Brenda Butler. And I'm going to let you go ahead and start to talk about this because the first thing I was amazed with was the reptilian. But then, of course, the beginning of your book, you also discuss things that a lot of people don't know. So I know you need to kind of go through the story, okay? Because a lot of people don't know about, Rendlesham or UFOs or anything like that. So why don't you go ahead and start and tell us a little bit about this incredible book that you did?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Zoe, for having me on board. I'm really very grateful, as always. Well, Sky Crash, throughout time, the new book that's appeared, is actually a dissemination of the events that occurred around Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk in England, which is known as UK's England's Roswell. And what a
Yes.
lot of people are aware of here in England is that back in the winter of 1980, there had been an event at Bentwaters, a US military base, obviously in Suffolk, where over a period of 3 nights, UFOs had been witnessed by military personnel. And this is a very famous case that most people are aware of with Colonel Charles Holt,
Yes.
Jim Penniston, John Burroughs, and of course the events that led during and over a period of 3 nights with regards to the strange activity of lights. Now, most of the researchers around have attributed these lights to nothing less than the Orphaness Lighthouse, or that it was parts to a satellite breaking up and coming down, or
Right.
pranks. Yeah, yeah. But we know, and I
Yeah,
know especially, that this was not the case at all.
exactly.
I met Colonel Charles Holt. My brother and I have had a meal with him. He's as sharp as a knife. As a commanding officer, he will tell you that it was definitely not the Orphaness Lighthouse. Now, what's very peculiar is that life has a certain way of, distributing synchronicity, because I remembered when I was very young, reading in the national newspapers about this event that had blown open. And I'd never, ever believed that many years later that I would actually myself be researching Rendlesham. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got involved with the UFO group, and what happened was that we had Peter Robbins coming over from America, a very decent, grounded, lovely gentleman, and he was talking about his experiences at Rendlesham because he also researched the area along with many other esteemed researchers. And he told myself, my brother, my twin brother Ronald, and Susan, a friend of ours, that we had to go there and check the place out ourselves. So that is exactly what we did. Suffolk is roughly around a 2-hour journey from Bedford, not that far really, and we started our investigations into the forest. And I can tell you that although most of the public are aware of the initial 1980 event over the Christmas period of 26th, 27th, and 28th of December with the military personnel, the Americans, there are recorded events of UFOs before and after. And this is something that I began to discover through my own investigations. The forest
Right.
itself is quite large and it's very foreboding. And apparently the twin bases that are based there are no longer housed by American military. They're deserted. There's nothing there.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. But through our research that we had done there, we discovered that the area itself, the geographical location itself, appeared to stimulate areas of high strangeness. And very quickly you'll get this in certain other geographical locations around the world, most notably in your amazing country, the national parks, also with the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, and also in Benton up north here, with Paul Sinclair doing a lot of research. So we wanted to investigate what it was that was promoting these levels of high strangeness.
Right.
You know, were we going into a nest or an activity of something that is, you know, some kind of portal? Our consciousness kind of triggering this on some level as we go into this certain area that's affected.
And interesting, I like that word, is your consciousness. I haven't heard that on anyone, but I do know that you're a medium and you do all these wonderful workshops and all this stuff. So I love the fact that you brought in the consciousness part.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think with regards to the subject matter of ufology and going into the nuts and bolts syndrome of it, we have to look outside the main aspects of what we've been dealing with for the past number of decades in terms of the physicality of the phenomena. Now, while we were in the forest and exploring the forest, we had several very strange experiences. And one of them was that we had been tracked by a military helicopter.
Yeah.
Come down very low.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and continuously hassling us. And they would come, you know, very low to where the trees were and were tracking me and Ronnie and Susan as we were doing our night vigils there, as though trying to flush us out. We don't know why. People will say to you, well, that's impossible. But I can assure you that's exactly what was going on.
Right.
There was another occasion where we had gone to our normal place to watch the sky, to watch the area, just on the edge of Capel Green, and we had placed a blanket down where we normally sat throughout the night with our coffee and sandwiches. And we'd gone off for a smoke. You know, I don't smoke now, but I used to smoke, and we'd only been gone around 20 minutes. And when we came back, something truly disturbing had occurred, because we found that on the blanket, someone had placed a dead rat and a dead rabbit in a circle from nose to tail, and they were fresh.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So in the interim of us being away for around about 20 minutes, someone or something had got these creatures, killed them, and placed them deliberately in a circle on our blanket. And of course, needless to say, we didn't stay very long that night. There was another occasion.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened was that through our initial investigations, we would see light phenomena, like different colored lights coming from the ground. And this promoted us to try and look at the area of where these lights were seen, but we could never quite catch them. They always seemed to be further away every time you got nearer to them.
Right.
Now, one of the other interesting things that happened to us was that on one occasion, we decided to see whether or not we could actually summon a UFO, to see if consciousness was somehow responsible in triggering some kind of dimensional awareness or awakening. And this came about through an idea I had through Karen Carpenter's song called In Occupants. And I remember thinking, is that possible? Are we able to call them? So we did a psychic experiment 1 week before the 8th of June, 1998. At home, to send our thoughts out to whoever, whatever, to say, look, we're going there on the 8th of June on another research trip. We'd like you to present yourselves to us with an experiment. We want to know whether or not this will work.
Well, Philip, just let me just butt in again. What you're saying right now is not just some hocus pocus. Okay. No. Stephen Greer has, I'm not a big fan of his anymore, but and I'm pretty sure that's what his name is, has workshops where they actually have filmed them and summon them in. So, I mean, this is what you're talking about is science. Okay. This is, you know, does happen. Okay. It's not just you telling the story and then all of a sudden this is coming in. No, I've seen this. Okay. Where they've been summoned in. Actually, I did it too. Okay. And it came. So what you're saying is true.
Yes, and I will tell you the full extent, an amazing, incredible, unfolding drama that ensued. I mean, this event has been recorded. So on the 8th of June 1998, we had gone to Rendlesham. We had gone to our place that we normally go to, which is just on the edge of Capel Green. We had, and the time had been roughly around about 9:30 when we ventured into the farmer's field, which was half full of crop and half derelict. And it was getting dark, and it was a clear sky. The stars were out. And I used some dowsing rods to try and find a place where I thought we could sit. I don't know. I didn't know anything about what would occur. We sat in this area and we meditated. Now, what's very strange is that when we came out of the meditation and looked around, roughly 7 minutes past 10, we saw this red light coming from way down from the farmer's house. And we thought that the farmer had tracked us in his field and got in his car and was coming towards us. And as we started to move back towards the edge of the field, I stopped and realized and said, hang on a minute, a car light isn't red, and there's normally two if there is not one.
Right.
And when we watched, this red light started to spin, and it was coming towards us, and then it shot very quickly across to the other side of the field and disappeared within the crop. And we thought at that point, wow, that's amazing. That was the first part. As we stood there, looking ahead across to the other side of the field, there was an intense flash of light that came from above one of the trees, and we then were presented with a very strange object. It was a pyramid-shaped device with a gap and a circular undercarriage under it. It looked like a witch's hat, but with a gap between the rim and, of course, the top part.
Right. So not like the bell then at all. The bell that's been seen. Okay.
No.
Okay.
And the pyramid top started to turn one way. It had this incredible light coming from its infrastructure. And the lower undercarriage, which was circular, had a bank of blue lights around it that was turning the other way. So one was clockwise, the one was going anti-clockwise. It remained in position, it was silent. We viewed it through the binoculars, we couldn't believe what we were seeing, and then I started towards it. I started to run.
Yeah.
And as I ran towards it, through the crop that started to soak my jeans, I was calling back to Susan Money to confirm, tell me that it's a pyramid-shaped device. Tell me it has a circular undercarriage with flashing blue light. I wanted them to confirm what I was seeing and what I was going towards.
Right.
To confirm that we were not seeing something different.
Right.
And as I ran more and more towards it, got closer and closer towards it, as I came underneath it, it was above the tree, I tripped, and then it went, gone.
Oh,
and
my
I fell
God.
onto the floor, and then I took in some dirt into my mouth, and when I composed myself and the others reached me, I laughed and then I cried because I thought, my goodness, no one will ever believe this. And I didn't want them to, because it was more of a personal exploitation of consciousness. Now, we didn't see any aliens, and some people have said, oh, it's because the military were projecting holographic technology away. Rubbish. At the end of the day, and was it the Orphaness Lighthouse? No, because it was still there when we were doing our research, and we could see that, and it's very faint. I mean, if the American troops were chasing the lights to an Orphaness, lighthouse, God help all of us.
Right. Right. Yeah. Now, Suzanne is a huge part of this book.
Yes.
Now, you wrote it with Brenda Butler, right? But Susan, I notice, is a big part of this book. Can you just go back a little bit, because just tell us about Susan? I mean, I don't know anything really about Susan.
Yeah, well, in order for me to explain that, I have to describe then the events of what occurred with regards to meeting Brenda Butler to begin with.
Okay, forget it.
Yeah, that's all right. There's no worries. Because in another case of what I would call a synchronicity occurred when we had done another research trip there. I mean, we were doing our research trips on and off for over many years. And on this one occasion, I didn't know where Brenda Butler lived. Now, Brenda Butler had been one of the original co-authors to a book called Sky Crash, A Cosmic Conspiracy.
Yes.
That had been co-authored with Dot Street and Brenda Butler. Now, Jenny Randles, who was UK's one of the UK's top ufologists. And this book had been published by Neville Spearman back in 1984. And it was like the explosive book that would open up the case towards the 1980 event that happened with Colonel Charles Holt and his men over the Christmas period. So when we were traveling to Rendlesham, I remember getting out of the car and saying, I really would like to meet Brenda Butler. When we had gone round the forest and done our research, we saw these lights coming from a copse of trees within the forest. And we thought, first of all, oh, is this a UFO? And of course, we were quite disappointed to find out it wasn't. As we got closer, it was a lady with a white German shepherd and a man, and they were playing some music and taking some pictures that were causing the flashes in the forest. And we walked past them, and the lady stood a little bit guarded, and we said, good. You could only say good evening. You could say good night, could you? And of course, we passed, and this feeling came over me, and I knew I had to go back and see the lady. So I ran back as they were carrying on doing their experimentation, and I said, are you trying to capture the orbs? And the lady stood up and she said, yes, why? And I said, well, I was rather hoping to meet Brenda Butler. And she said, my dear, I am Brenda Butler.
I mean, what an amazing chance that is. I mean,
yeah.
Come on, Philip.
Yeah. And that was the
Wow.
start of some really weird, synchronicities that started to occur. So we built up a trust with Brenda Butler.
Yeah.
And she is she's an amazing lady. She's been in that forest. She was there when the Americans were at base. She was friends with the Americans, all the servicemen and the servicewomen as well too. She was connected with all of them there. She ran a ghost group long before the events unfolded with regards to the 1980 event with the military personnel. And so it was Brenda that started to explain to me that she had documented a lot of UFO activity before, during, and after the main event of England's Roswell. So when I got her confidence, she explained to me another fascinating area before I go into the main crux of the story, is that she allowed me to hold some type of residue that had occurred with the UFO that Colonel Charles Holt had seen, that was dripping some type of molten material onto the ground.
Right.
Now, and Brenda and Dot would go in and pick up the pieces when the evidence was presented.
Right.
And I held this light honeycomb, very strange material that had all these kind of like different colors around it, and the little pins of little pinpricks of holes in it, but was so light that couldn't be cut. And I do know that she'd sent several pieces or different parts to that, so to be analysed.
Okay,
and it was unknown material.
That was going to be my next question. So what did they find out?
Well, they found out that it had unknown composition, but it even gets even stranger. And they couldn't explain to you. And of course, I think most of these areas won't tell you what it is. I mean, any more than the Battelle unit with regards to the pieces or alleged pieces of the Roswell crash, the material itself that we're not really sure about. So they're not going to give it all out. But what happened then was that when I connected with Brenda, I said to Brenda, I think it might be a really good idea to combine a book together. I know that you co-authored Sky Crash, A Cosmic Conspiracy with Jenny Randles and Dot Street, and that was the only one since 1984. It did go into paperback version after the hardback. But why don't we write a new book? And then she allowed me to have access to a lot of her material that she had documented over the many decades of her involvement within Rendlesham research.
Right.
And I was really shocked to find out that the main event in 1980 was not the only event to occur. And going through the book, we found some very strange and very shady characters, and some of which had been connected with the base at the time of the 1980 event, and some not, that weren't interested in the events then, or surrounding it. And I know that there's a lot of controversy with regards to Rendlesham, because if you go into any celebrated UFO case, unfortunately, you're going to upset a lot of people because they have their own version of events. But I must stress for the case that my understanding is I'm very open to all forms of speculation, but several key factors have to be maintained. It was not a satellite, it was not the lights from the Orford Nest Lighthouse, and it wasn't, the SAS performing, some kind of trick on the Americans to get back at them with helium balloons and lights on them.
Right.
So there's been many kind of like descriptions of what it was, even to do linked with the Big Bear and Russia, which is a very touchy subject with regards to Colonel Charles Holt and Brenda.
I have a quick question. They do have some photos. Are these photos of a crash? Are these photos just CGIs then?
We're not sure. I mean, at the
Okay.
end of the day, from what we can understand, if there was any film footage that had been taken, it was put into the hands of the American military. They would have had access to that because of afterwards. The other authorities came in to try and silence most of the witnesses to those ensuing events in 1980.
Well, of course.
So we are understanding that something major and incredible did occur. UFOs had somehow compromised the military base as well by firing beams down on the weapons facility storage unit. And not only upon the American troops and Colonel Charles Holt, which was very strange, but also Jim Penniston, observing the triangular craft that he had seen that they thought at first had been some kind of downed object. And this was the beginning of their investigations when they found out it was actually a craft not from here.
So what was that again? Okay, wait. So what was that again?
With regards to the main events of Colonel Charles Holt, the UFO had compromised the military's weapons storage facilities, and also with the lights coming down.
Wow.
Wow. From the sky, yeah.
Wow. There's a lot on the Rendlesham. So, okay, so how did you get with Suzanne? It's Suzanne, right?
Yeah, Suzanne was nothing to do with me. I mean, she was linked with Brenda at the time through her research, so I can bring her into it. Yeah.
Right. So then from the Rendlesham, it kind of went into this very odd portion of the book with this David Daniels. Now, I may be a little ahead of myself because I'm going to let you do what you want to do, but why don't we
I'll go into that.
Okay, good. Great.
Yeah. So when are we recording? We're recording now, or?
We've been.
We're ready. We're ready to go, yeah? Ready to record now? Okay. So, when looking at the evidence with regards to Rendlesham, we are assured that something possibly non-terrestrial had infiltrated that American base, taken aside all of the other assumptions of, weapons technology or holographic projection or the lights from the Orphaness Lighthouse or many of the other major events. Now, what I found out also, which was incredibly very strange, was that Brenda Butler in 1984, and after the publication of Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy, had actually, of all things, had befriended a reptilian. Now, before I say any more, most people will roll their eyes up and say, I don't believe it. But how about this then? When you discover that this reptilian that was in human form and had revealed himself to Brenda Butler had not only been witness to many of the people around the surrounding village where Brenda Butler lived, but also key members within the UFO units during that time, along with Lord Admiral Hill Norton within the House of Lords, and also MOD Ralph Noyes. He also connected as well with Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens in the USA, along with many other prominent figures within ufology. Now, I will explain what happened. After the publication of Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy by Neville Spearman back in 1984, when the three ladies had concluded their evidence in that book, Brenda got this call through from Dot Street, her friend. And Dot Street lived quite a long way away from Brenda. And Dot phoned Brenda.
Dot did not like him.
No, that's right. She called Brenda to say that she had this very strange man that she wanted to get rid of in her house. And he presented himself as David Daniels.
Yes.
And she didn't like him at all. And Brenda didn't really want to drive up, but she basically did go all the way and meet Dot in her house and this strange guy called David Daniels. And Dot Street was saying that, that he just appeared from the door then to another side of the house,
Right.
and inside the house somewhere else. So he was using some kind of projection.
Right.
And of course, Brenda is very grounded. And when she met David Daniels, she kind of liked him. I think
Right.
she's probably the only person that did get on with him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he looked kind of strange too.
Yes, I mean he had a crew cut haircut. He looked like a young male that had just fresh out of the military, wore a long leather jacket, was very well presented. He had no discernible accent. From what we can understand, it's almost like he was British. He wasn't American, or he was taking on the guise of a British voice.
Sure.
That's the only way we can say
yeah.
it. And so after this wrangling with Dot and Brenda decided to take him for a walk and find out who and what he was. And incredibly, this David Daniels explains that he was from the Pleiades, that his people were in trouble, that he'd come to meet Brenda, and that he wanted her help. So when she returned back to Dot's house, and Dot was frantic, wondering where they'd been, her friend had been out for some time, and of course there was a little bit of an argument. David went up to one of Dot Street's rooms in one of the bedrooms and shut himself in, and Brenda went up to go and see him. Now, when she went to go and see him, he was clearly upset, and she didn't understand all of what was going on, but she's very sympathetic and very understanding. And David Daniels then told her that it was time for her to see him in his true form.
Yes.
So what happened was that it took a while, but she saw what she can only describe. I think she says that she wasn't fazed by it, but I think for anyone that would have been quite an unnerving moment when his true form came through as kind of like a reptilian.
Exactly.
And once he'd finished this transitional stage, he then produced some sweets. He needed to eat sweets to retain his energy, and that's the only thing he did eat. He didn't eat really any food or anything like that.
He ate a lot of vegetables or salad.
Yeah, well, they were more to do with the sweets. They didn't really see him eating much of anything. I mean, in terms of his physiology or what was going on with him, they're not really sure, but they can only report what was going on. Now, Brenda decided that she could have him come stay in her caravan, because Brenda had a house. She lived in a house, but she had no room in a house.
Because Dot didn't want him in there.
That's right. So she wanted him out, and he scared her. He could read minds, and she just didn't understand him. And as we go through this, we discover that David Daniels had this unnerving ability of upsetting people. And at the end, I'll conclude something very strange, where we three, myself, my brother, and Susan, feel that we had also met him long before I got involved with Brenda and the research of Rendlesham.
Wow.
And in the same area. So Brenda had him stay in her caravan, and one of the strange things is in her caravan she doesn't have any cleaning facilities or toilets or anything like that. It's just basically a caravan.
He uses nothing.
No, and he comes out presented in exactly the same way as he had throughout. And he never broke
no grooming, no bathroom, no nothing. Right.
No. And on one occasion, when Brenda sometimes did invite him into her house, they never saw him use the loo or anything. He was always in their presence. Brenda was with her partner then, Chris. And Chris was unnerved by him because Chris is a very down-to-earth, structured gentleman. I can tell he used to play for a band, and he used to play at the American Air Base. And he was really unnerved by this person or reptilian called David Daniels because
because he ruined his caravan.
Yeah.
By his emitting of this heat.
Yes.
He ruined all the paint.
Yeah. So what happened was that on one occasion, I'll go back to that quickly, was that with David Daniels, one morning, Chris and Brenda came out and they found that all the paint on the outside of the caravan had peeled away.
Right.
And this is only attributed to intense heat occurring from the inside. So they wondered whether or not whatever this thing was, David Daniels, whatever he was or professed to be, was generating incredible heat from inside, which literally crisped all of the paint on the outside like a blowtorch.
Yeah.
So David Daniels could read minds, and Brenda wasn't quite sure about what his primary purpose was, but he explained that there were two other females that would present themselves to Brenda, and that they were part of his mission, because David Daniels stated that he was from another star system, his planet was in trouble. And what's strange is that although Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy had just been published in 1984, because that's around the time that he appeared on the scene, he was not interested at all in Rendlesham, other than taking an ordnance survey map and then drawing these lines to show where their ley lines were on what trajectory the UFOs would have used. Yeah.
Right. Now, wasn't there like 7 other people, or am I just going crazy?
Yes. Yeah, there was supposed to be a group of them, but Brenda was met by one of them, Susan, and she presented herself, and of course there was another one that came, and they seemed sincere within their connection to David Daniels, and they did arrive and visit Brenda. I mean, she had a lot of visitors in 1984. Sometimes literally out of this world. Yeah,
I mean, her husband must have been just really pissed off.
But, you know, when you are doing the research and you are, you know, you're interviewing the people, let me tell you, one of the most unnerving things, and this also came from someone who used to be connected with the Ministry of Defence, that said to me, after we had published a book through Capelban Publishing Limited that has been reprinted through Philip Kinsella Blinders Press, the book Sky Crash Throughout Time that I and Brenda had co-authored was published by Capelban Publishing Limited in 2013. And an ex-member of the Ministry of Defence, when I had been in the United States at the conference in Phoenix, not there as a speaker, but, you know, seeing others speak, he said to me, David Daniels, now that was interesting, wasn't it? And he said no more about that. And I knew at that point that going back to what happened with Brenda and all of the unfolding events that were and are yet to happen as I go through this was really very bizarre. So what happened was that David Daniels then sought out Jenny Randles, who was also the co-author to Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy, and she sent him away because she thought that he was just a crazy person. Because everyone he met, he seemed to, you know, annoy or get under their skin on some level. They didn't know what he was after. But
well, like even the town, like where he was walking in the town, the townspeople,
the locals wanted him
they were like, we don't want him here.
That's right. That's right. He was scaring the folk there, and they didn't like his energy. They wanted him to go. Now, what was interesting was that David Daniels had then sought out Ministry of Defence top personnel, Ralph Noyes. Now, Ralph Noyes then went on to write a book called A Secret Prophet, a science fiction book that was based around a science fiction version of the Rendlesham events. And he was trying to make out this was real in kind of like saying it in fiction terms. And I have a copy of that book. Now, Ralph Noyes was very interested in David Daniels. In fact, he went to go and stay with him over 3 days. And what happened with Ralph Noyes and David Daniels was that David Daniels wanted to prove to Ralph Noyes of his originality, that he was what he claimed to be. And he took him on a bridge in London, not far from the television studios, raised his arms up to the heavens, and there before them were 3 spherical UFOs in a triangular formation that appeared that Ralph Noyes could see. And that is exactly what happened. And in most of the communications that occurred, not just with Brenda Butler and these other ufologists that started to come forward about David Daniels, surely states for the record that there was something very bizarre about this individual. He was able to summon UFOs or make them appear in front of, you know, someone that was linked very high up in the Ministry of Defence here in England. Now, the other thing that happened that's even more bizarre was the fact that David Daniels was connected in America, in the United States of America, and he had infiltrated the prison unit where Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens was serving his time in there. for apparently or allegedly trumped up charges, because Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens was very much into ufology and with a connection of research.
So they put him in jail.
Yeah. Well, what happened was that I saw the emails that had been sent from Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens to another researcher, ex-CID John Hanson, here in England, and all through his daughter, Ceci. Now, these emails are very revealing, because Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens had this visit from a Father Daniels. And so David Daniels had then adopted the guise of a father, a priest, and had the card to show that he was a priest. And of course, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens was not, someone that would just suffer fools gladly. He knew there was something not right about this individual. And there were several meetings with him, and Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens did not know what on earth that David Daniels wanted with him. But we assumed that David Daniels was reading minds. So we think that what was happening,
well,
he was trying to get to,
he was telepathic.
Trying to get to the key members of top ufologists. We don't know what he was looking for or what he was after, but these meetings actually occurred on several occasions. And Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens even had a person, one of his mates that worked high up in the police force, go and track him to find out where he was staying. And he found out that he was staying in some cheap hotel, and that he was wearing a guise as a priest, and that he was driving around in his car. And he even went to go and see Wendell Stevens' daughter, and was kind of like hanging around the area where she lived. And it's just all very bizarre.
Yeah,
it gets even weirder, because back here in England, David Daniels had set a meeting up with, of course, Lord Admiral Hill Norton, Lord of the Fleet. And as everyone knows here in England, Lord Admiral Hill Norton was very clued up with UFO research in the government circles.
Prominent guy,
along with the Earl of Pancati, which is another area entirely. But what happened was that Brenda had seen David. They met up again, and he asked her if she would go along with him to see Lord Admiral Hill Norton in London. In the House of Lords.
Right.
Now, the meeting was set up. Now, you've got to understand and bear in mind that if you are having a meeting with, any form of nobility, it has to go through some kind of clearance first. Secretaries or whatever. So, but this meeting occurred where Brenda and David had been taken to go and see the Lord. Now, Brenda took with her a copy of Sky Crash. She was searched. David Daniels was not.
Well, they didn't want anything to do with her. They wanted to talk to him, right?
That's right. Now, when they were led into the office to go and meet the Lord, they sat at a big table.
Yeah.
And what happened was that Lord Admiral Hill Norton was listening to David Daniels' pleas about his people. They were having trouble on their planet. And Brenda is sitting there while, this Lord of the Fleet and extraterrestrial are having this conversation as though they're just, having a cup of coffee or whatever. And she can't believe what's being spoken. But Lord Admiral Hill Norton said, "It's out of my hands. I'm near to retirement. I can't help you. I can't get involved with this."
Yeah, he didn't even want to see her book. I mean, she put it towards him, and he just gave it back to her. He wasn't interested in that whatsoever.
That's right. And what occurred was that when Brenda had pushed Sky Crash, a cosmic conspiracy, to the Lord, he pushed it back and said that I don't want anything to do with it if that's anything to do with the Americans. She didn't know what that meant,
right?
But it obviously was a touchy subject,
right?
So that meeting actually occurred, and then what Brenda found out was that Scotland Yard and CID, along with FBI, she thinks it's possibly CIA, wanted David Daniels, because she had several phone calls coming through that she redialed back then in those days to find out that it was actually Scotland Yard that phoned her, and David Daniels was being, apparently set up for a murder in London that didn't occur.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, And she was
Wow.
warned that if she sees him again, that she is to contact Scotland Yard immediately. But what's strange is this, Zoe. If Scotland Yard and CIA and all the others knew that he'd been around Brenda, why didn't they arrest him there and then? This is very
Yeah.
strange.
I just, what I don't get, okay, is a couple things. Now, so he revealed himself more
Yes.
than once, okay?
Yes.
So obviously what you're talking about is that he had also revealed himself to these people to the point of where they knew that there was something going on here.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll tell you something as well that's very, very weird, is that every single person that he met, they were slightly unnerved by him. Now, remember I said to you, Zoe, before that we feel that we had met the same character many years before I got involved with the research of this, and many years after these events had concluded. So every time he was seen, he was known. He left a deep impression within a subconscious-minded individual. Now, he then was on the run. We don't know where he went. But then, of course, he was seen in Australia with, we reckon it could have been Susan, one of his, partners in crime. Well, I use that word lightly.
Right. That was actually another reptilian.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Now, there was a report came through to indicate that he'd been seen in this kind of like on this coach with a lot of other people that went on this kind of like expedition.
Right.
And all of them on the coach, all of them found him very strange. And one of the people, he claimed to be a reptilian, he said, one of them tried to take a photograph of him and the lady, and all that came out was light. There was just light. That's all they had.
Interesting.
And since that time, he disappeared. Now, rewind back to when we had met Peter Robbins.
Right, okay.
And now, when he first told us about Rendlesham.
And go.
Okay, so you found this person in the past. Okay, what was his name again?
Well, I will tell you it was Joseph. Let me explain what happened. Before I got involved with the research of Rendlesham, before I knew anything about Brenda Butler, and long after all of these events that we recorded in our books had occurred, Peter Robbins said to us, go there. Well, we were going to go there, but first of all, we did a sky watch there with a UFO group that we belonged to.
Sure.
And we all went to Rendlesham to this sky watch.
Right.
And we stopped in a pub to have some food and some drink, obviously not the alcoholic sort, otherwise you'd see more than stars.
You're so funny. Just because I know of an event that happened where someone did that to you and it was horrific. But yeah, okay, so, yeah.
All of us on the minibus go in and we get our grub. And Ronnie, Susan, and I are sitting at a table. And all of a sudden there is a man that is not part of our group that was in the pub standing by the door and made a beeline for us. Now he had kind of like blondish hair that was a little bit crew cut.
Okay.
He looked to me to about mid-40s. He wore a long coat and he sat down with us and started to ask questions about us. And what's really strange is that it seemed like he knew what we were about. Now, he wasn't interested in the Skywatch. I will explain here that at one point Susan and Ronnie saw his hand change almost like to plastic, and it unnerved them. Yeah. I hadn't seen them, but I believe them, I trust them.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't know anything about David Daniels at this point, but this guy said that his name was Joseph, and he was going to come along with us to the Skywatch.
That's right. Now that's where the Joseph comes in. Okay.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
so
right, I was kind of confused about that in the beginning, but now because I read that, and then you were saying no, that's a different part. So this Joseph guy.
Yeah. So he follows us, he gets in his car and he follows us to the Skywatch, and he is with me and Ronnie and Susan all the time. And to be honest with you, it seemed like we wanted to get rid of him. We didn't want him around us because he was getting into our mind, he was getting into our skull. He was like, he knew things about us that really unnerved us. Now, what happened was that when we all concluded the Skywatch, which wasn't very successful, I'm afraid, when we were all back in the minibus, every single person on that minibus was talking about Joseph and how strange he was. Now, this is the thing with a little bit of synchronicity. I believe now, looking at the information I was given from Bender from many years before, back in 1984, and to us meeting him many years later, it didn't look like he'd aged. And also that he seemed to be one of the same person. And people say that's impossible. Well, actually, to be honest with you, being a reptilian in, ordinarily terms is impossible.
I thought they shapeshift, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Now, also, didn't he like come after you, or someone came after you in a car? And you guys got really scary?
Butler. Yeah, that was with Brenda Butler. Yeah, when she was doing her research with regards to Rendlesham, and of course with David Daniels, she had been followed.
Right.
Of course, David was not interested in Rendlesham, but they'd been followed by a car.
Yes.
And so this was indications or signs that he was wanted by obviously higher officials.
Sure.
And, concocting a story that he was a murderer, that he was a dangerous man. But we think that he was anything but. We do not know what his intentions were. We do not know why he had presented himself to Brenda, or indeed why he had been so random in most of his connections with people, to the point where a lot of folks just didn't want anything to do with him. And yet he had infiltrated a lot of individuals, not only here in England, but America and also in Australia. We don't know what happened to him, but of course, if it's anything to go by, maybe he's still around. We don't know.
Okay, but Philip, okay, so what, is your consensus of this David Daniels? And what did he want? Why was he here?
I think there was another aspect to this that's very interesting. Brenda had taken him to go and see some of her friends. This may answer some truly extraordinary questions.
Okay.
And one of them was a John Day that was connected with the Avery case, a very famous UFO case here in England that happened to a family with John Day and his family. Now, David Daniels, Brenda had presented to John Day to see if they would get on. And immediately, both of them hated one another. They couldn't stand one another. And they knew from David Daniels to John Day that they were from past incarnations and are at war against each other from these different worlds of the Pleiades and another star.
Sure.
This was incredible. And of course, it got to the stage where Brenda had to take David Daniels away from the family, and he had severely been affected, traumatized by the events of that meeting. So when you ask, so we have a very absolutely valid point that even we ourselves are trying to understand, what was this reptilian? What did he want? What was he after? Well, I think, to be honest with you, he kind of like played it cool. If he was wanting something, he would have got it through the minds of all those that he met. What his intentions were, we don't know. We do know also that he said that his spacecraft that he came in was well hidden. No one would find it.
Right.
And that the crew were amassing information or trying to get information from certain ufologists. And I think, and Phil, I do know that, as I said, most people will say, no, don't believe it. Well, I will say to you and unto you now, you will have to believe it, because the events actually happened.
Right.
And the levels of high strangeness that came with this clearly indicates that within the field of UFO research, that, it does come with these levels of high strangeness. People experience weird people, weird things. They have no idea why they happen or what's going on. So this was a large chunk of the book with regards to David Daniels, and it's just like he's vanished off the face of the earth. We don't know where he is. We don't know if he's still around. We have no idea.
Okay, so really no one ever figured out what he wanted.
No. He obviously, when he went to go and see Lord Admiral Hill Norton, he was more concerned with the plight of his people on his world. Apparently he came from a world that was dying and that they needed our help here on Earth. So whether or not he was some kind of ambassador or some kind of, link to a higher authority with his people, we don't know. But, when people say reptilian, it's like, well, we hear these stories of about the greys, the reptoids, and all the rest of it, and people will tell you what they are and where they're from. But I can assure you, I and many other researchers, the grounded ones, don't know. But I can assure you that David Daniels was real. He connected with those people. He amassed information apparently consciously. His visits and sightings were documented, even from those higher personnel. So there is no question. And then, of course, an ex-Ministry of Defense official telling me that, yes, wasn't he an interesting character, or words to that effect?
That's
Yeah?
yeah,
That's coming from Ministry of Defense.
Yeah, right, exactly. But you know, the whole trip about this was, it was just kind of like, okay, so why didn't he ask for?
We don't know.
Wow.
He seemed quite strange. I mean, he had these, but he loved books, and he went to go and see a priest as well too. And if you gave him a book, an entire book,
He'd
you gave him
read
a
that.
book,
Yeah, he read.
yeah,
he's done.
that was it. And he went to go and see a priest, and the priest was very kind to him and understood his plight. And the priest was absolutely amazed that he could recite intense passages,
yes,
from the Bible.
Right.
And he even stole the Bible, and Brenda had to ask him to go and give the Bible back because he had a fetish for books. We don't know why.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the terrestrial comes all the way from the Pleiades, and he's stealing books. I mean, you know, he
Yeah.
doesn't need them. He just likes the feel of them, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So it comes down to that conclusion. So how are you ending the book then?
Well, we ended the book on the premise that, you know, with regards to a lot of the UFO activity that's seen before and after Rendlesham, David Daniels appeared to disappear off the scene completely. There was no more leads to him until there could be, that, you know, I'd stated here with what happened with us, but of course nothing can be proven in terms of that. But it just seems very strange that the experience we had seemed to mirror all of those experiences that happened in the past. I think in Phil, Zoe, the area itself within Rendlesham and certain other key locations around the world that promotes these levels of high strangeness may indicate that they are some kind of portals or openings of other interdimensional beings, not from here, but from other levels of dimensional awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you hear these stories. I mean, I've had, you know, I've been doing, you know, it doesn't make me clever. I'm still still puzzled, but we have theories. But, you know, in the past, I've had phone calls from people, one of them from the prominent UFO book, who he's sadly, I won't mention his name, he sadly passed away, committed suicide, but was convinced that he was being tracked by these beings. So I think and feel that in any terms of research that you do, you know, you have to kind of keep your feet on the ground, because you'll end up becoming, you know, kind of like slightly disturbed by it all, because of these levels of high strangeness.
Yeah, I mean, when she explained when he transformed or whatever,
oh yes,
that he had like kind of a snout, or
yes,
what did he look like? I mean, I remember, but you know, I don't remember everything like you do.
I mean, her interpretation was almost of a reptilian that looked very kind, but I don't know how you can define kind. There were no pictures taken of him. In fact, if anyone did try, all they got was light. And of course, during that time, we've got to understand, back in 1984, you didn't always have access to cameras. You see, not like today, we have mobile phone technology. You had to make sure the film was in the camera. And I think, to be honest with you, people will say, you know, well, we need proof. Well, I'm sorry, but whatever proof you bring to the table, it still isn't enough, because even if it's video technology, photographic, proof, people were still saying, no, don't believe it. You know, even if you handed someone a part to the Roswell crash, a bit of the material, they'll say, don't believe it.
Right.
It's some kind of magic.
Right.
So whatever you present in terms of evidence, it's like it's not to be seen. It feels to me like a lot of people kind of like are understanding and accepting of cases long gone than something that's just occurred. This is very strange indeed. We don't understand why that is the case, where people are more interested in the past than the present. Maybe it's like a bottle of wine. A bottle of red wine. You leave it to mature, and then after years, it's okay to drink. You know.
Right. Well, I just, you know, I was really amazed by this, because, you know, if you know anything about the reptilians, they're bad. You know, everyone thinks they're so bad, you know, and that they're living and, you know, down in underground facilities, you know, if we want to talk about Phil Schneider and things like that.
Phil Schneider,
yeah, that was killed, obviously, by the government. I mean, big cover up there. Sorry, that's my belief. but that they were eating humans and they live in the inner earth. What's your spin on that?
Well, I mean, Phil Schneider, yes, the geologist, and of course, found with a catheter wrapped around his neck. Of course, he was going to release all the details in a book of his findings because he was there part of the Dulce-based investigations when that war broke out with the tall greys with the big noses. And of course, he suffered horrific injuries to his hand. I think, and Phil, Zoe, that with regards to the reptilians, I mean, this is the other thing. You'll get people telling you what they're about, where they're from, and they've got their names and everything. I'm afraid I don't have a clue, but I will tell you one thing. My research is more linked to the greys, as you know, the greys and the abduction phenomena.
Sure.
But with regards to the reptilians, there is every, indication to suggest that they are here. There's been reports of them being able to walk through walls, just like the greys. And I feel that whatever's going on, higher establishments will not want the people, we the people, that they consider as the lowest spectrum of society. They do not want us to know the reality of this, because I think because we've already been programmed to a degree with the basics of life, people like yourself and many other people like myself and other researchers are open-minded enough to accept, most of what's being discovered and theorized within UFO circles. However, the system itself will have a problem telling much of the good folk out there who don't know, and it may frighten them, because we're dealing with things that obviously operate on multiple dimensions of reality and not through, other planets that we're aware of.
Right.
I think that's something that will frighten a lot of people in terms of a revelation, as it were.
Well, the big thing about it now, the big hype now is that reptilians are like higher ups, and they have these glitches, they call them, where their eyes change and they do all this stuff. So that's like the new thing they're doing now, is that the higher governments are now reptilians, and they show these glitches. I'm just kind of like, I kind of laugh. But
yeah, I mean, we know that there are evil forces. We know, without going into too much detail, very, very quickly here, that with areas and investigations into the afterlife, consciousness, survival consciousness, and the different alternative levels of reality beyond this realm, definitely are there. Whether or not they are indications or connections through these links, we don't know. But certainly, I think and feel that some people can be possessed. And there is every possibility to believe that, after a certain amount of time, that certain beings can temporarily override an individual. That much is proven in an abduction phenomena when an individual is arrested and taken into the domain of the greys, for instance, through the abduction process.
Unbelievable.
But it's only temporary. Yeah.
Wow.
But
wow.
I don't know. I don't know a lot about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So people can buy your book on Amazon.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
and that's a great place to go. That's really easy. Now, I know you also do all kinds of other wonderful things, and you give workshops and talks and all that. And they can find all this on Facebook, right? That's simple.
Yes.
And they just go to Ronald Kinsella, and not Ronald, Philip Kinsella. Ronald's your twin. And kind of find out about everything you're doing and all this new stuff. And it's just absolutely wonderful.
Well, you're wonderful as well, Zoe, and don't forget that. And I have to say here as well, too, that there is a link, www.thekinsellatwins.com.
Yes.
And of course, and I have a new UFO book that's coming out this year.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so that's being released this year, about the abduction phenomena and levels of high strangeness. And I'm working on two new projects on UFO books, one for one publisher and another for another. So it's kind of like juggling a little bit, but and it makes you, I enjoy what I do. It doesn't make me clever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you were able to even get on here. I was like, I was like, woo. I mean, with all the stuff I was seeing, I was like, I don't know. I told Dee this morning, I said, this guy's busy, man. We got to get to it and get to it good. You know?
I think, at the end of the day, we all are important. We all have our connections. We all have our links. Doesn't matter who you are. But you know what? I never would have believed ever in my life that when I was a young lad, that I would be connected with so many wonderful people and, researchers as well within the field of UFO research and ufology itself, and also in other areas of quantum understanding. So it really is quite interesting. We don't have any answers. We just have a bunch of theories. It doesn't make us clever, but I think the heart of it is the real chase. I think finding the truth is a wonderful thing that really burns in your soul. You want to know what this is all about.
Well, yeah, especially since on your first book, the Public Deceived, which everybody go get that. That's his experience, okay, of being a contactee. So that, kind of sets a stage for you and all of this other stuff, and then of course your brother also has an incredible book, the demon, what is that one?
Here's one of the books, The Digital Demon.
Yeah, The Digital Demon. That was fantastic. So that kind of led into you doing all of this new stuff.
Yeah, I think it was due to an abduction that occurred in 1989,
right,
that then fueled my investigations to find out the truth of what these were, where they come from,
sure,
and trying to dispel most of the myths surrounding the abduction phenomena.
Exactly. Okay, well, you've given a ton of information. I just want to say I really appreciate you coming in since you're getting so big.
I
don't know. Is there anything else you want to say or add?
I just want to say, first of all, I'm very grateful to you, Zoe, for having me on your amazing show, and also to make you realize and understand, all of you good folks out there, that, I never wanted to be big. I will tell you, I am 6 foot, so I'm tall.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful for all the help and support that I have, and, the belief and looking for the truth, which is what this is all about, the truth. That's what we're after.
And you're completely legit. Believe me. I know enough people that, well, it's kind of like, I have go-to people. And the rest can just fly out the window as far as I'm concerned. Seriously. You get to know this and you're just like, I don't think so. So, okay. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I know you're so busy. I know you got to go. And I will contact you soon. Okay.
Thank you. And can I just send a lot of love to you? I know you're not. I always worry. Lots of love, lots of hugs to you. I know people get a bit funny, but we're friends, so good on you.
I know, okay. And thank you for all your help. You've given me a lot of help, and I'm going to be sending you some questions.
Okay. No, I'll answer them.
Okay. All right. So I'll see you later. I know you got to go. We talk normally after, but I'm letting you go.
Thank you very much, lovely. God bless both of you.
Thank you. God bless you, and thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Zoe. Goodbye.